The Senate has confirmed Kash Patel, leaving only, I believe, 4 of Donald Trump's nominees out waiting to finish off. I think we've got Chavez DeRimmer, Linda McMahon, Jameson Greer, and Elise Stefanik left. So most of the people that Donald Trump has looked to appoint have gotten in. The notable exception being a friend of the show, Matt Gaetz. But it looks like the primary people that Donald Trump has been looking to push forward, looks like he's going to get the cabinet of his choice. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Let's see. There's talk about Donald Trump wanting to abolish the IRS and replacing it with tariffs, which I think is generally looked at as favorable among most of the people that are sitting around the table, but we'll discuss that. The Trump administration is talking about mass firing of federal workers and judge rules. That would be something that, again, we would be we would look at as positive. We've got some movement on Doge. So there's the Doge dividend, which has actually gotten a lot of people talking on my personal Twitter page. I made a comment about it, and there's a lot of people with a lot of strong feelings about that as well. Then there's some international news with Donald Trump talking to Vladimir. Well, I don't think actually Donald Trump's doing it, but there's, I believe it was the Secretary of State in... was it UAE or is it Saudi Arabia? I'm not sure where, but it's somewhere in the Middle East, hosting the discussion between Russia and the U.S. about the Ukraine and the policies that the United States are changing. There's going to be a reverse on them. There's discussions about who's going to be taking care of Ukraine's security and will the Europeans pick up the slack. I believe Macron is going to Ukraine on Monday to discuss this, and France has said that they will pick up a large portion of it, so we'll get to that. But before we get into that, how about if you head on over to castbrew.com and buy some coffee? We're going to go ahead and bring that up in a second. Castbrew.com is our coffee company. You can go and you can get... I think we can actually get Ian's Graphene Dream. That's the big seller lately. You guys love the low acidity blend, and you're making a millionaire out of our good friend Ian. He's selling coffee like it's going out of style. You could go and get Appalachian Nights. It's still available. You can get some of the 2 weeks till Christmas blend, which is me dressed up in a silly Santa Claus costume. And then you can head on over to, are we going to do the boonies too? No? Okay, well then you can head on over to timcast.com and become a member. Join up, become a member of the Discord. And you'll be signed up for the Rumble after show, where you can call in. We do Rumble rants. But the really important thing is jump over there and join the Discord. You join the Discord and you can talk to like-minded individuals. There have been people that have been married. There are multiple podcasts that have started through the Discord. The community is great, and that's one of the things that we here at Timcast are really trying to do. We want to build community, get like-minded individuals connected with people that feel the same way, that are looking to do things. Maybe you'll go ahead and open up a Cast Brew franchise yourself or whatever, but join the Discord. So smash the like button. Share the show with all your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more, we have Kevin Smith.
Hey, how's it going?
Kevin, who are you? What do you do?
My name's Kevin Smith. Sorry, guys. I know you saw that and thought Silent Bob was going to be on here, but that's the story of my life. I'm an activist from Long Island. I run an organization called the Loud Majority. I'm also an advisory board member of the New York City Young Republican Club, and I host a podcast every day, 1 p.m. Eastern, on LFA TV on Rumble.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Mary is here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Morgan. I co-host Pop Culture Crisis here at Timcast. We actually had Phil on the episode today. So you
Thrashing Thursdays.
It's called Thrashing Thursdays when Phil is on. Hi, Elaad.
Hey, Mary. How's it going? Hey, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. My name is Elaad. I'm a journalist here at Timcast. Phil, let's get into it.
I did that on purpose. Elaad's great. I love him. So the Senate has decided to confirm Kash Patel as Trump's FBI director. This is something that obviously we here at Timcast are very happy about, being that Kash Patel has been on the show multiple times. We consider him a friend of the show. But CNN is reporting the Senate voted on Thursday to confirm Kash Patel as FBI director, installing a staunch loyalist of President Donald Trump and conservative firebrand at the head of the nation's top law enforcement agency. The Senate voted 51-49 to confirm Patel, with Republican Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski joining with Democrats in voting against his confirmation, which should come as a surprise to no one. Both Collins and Murkowski are from purple districts, I think is a safe way to say, but they're also very independent minded. So maybe if they're even if they're not specifically Democrat leaning, they're definitely independent, and they have their own opinions. I think that around the table, we're all generally pro Kash Patel. We like the idea of making changes in the bureaucracy, and the FBI has had significant political bias in the past, definitely 4 years, probably longer if you want to go back to the IRS targeting. Well, that's the IRS doing it, but the IRS should have been investigated by the FBI, and it was the Eric Holder, the AG, declined to investigate the IRS targeting of conservatives. But what do you guys think? Do you guys have a fresh perspective on Kash Patel, or is it kind of?
Nah, honestly, I'm loving it. I'm loving the change in D.C. I'm loving the fact that Democrats are getting exactly what they caused. They think that politics happens in a vacuum. I can't believe Donald Trump would ever appoint someone like Kash Patel. And I'm sitting back here thinking to myself, if you guys hadn't acted the way you did over the last decade, you wouldn't have gotten many of these nominees. But if Donald Trump has shown one thing, it's that the harder you push against him, the harder he's going to push back. And Kash Patel is I would say, the strongest force forward for Donald Trump. And I can't wait to see what he puts out first, what he thinks is the most important. Is it Epstein? Is it Diddy? Is it all this stuff? I want to know about the aliens.
Did you know he's a Long Island boy?
He is when you want something done right, you get a guy from Long Island. You get a guy from Garden City. Shout out to Kash Patel.
Right, I'm not touching that one. But so I know that there is a lot of people that are like, oh, the Epstein list. They're very interested in that. They're interested in the JFK files. They're interested in possibly in UFO stuff, but I'm not sure that the FBI would have info on the UFO stuff. Do you guys get the sense that that's the stuff that's going to have the most impact on Americans generally? I understand that there are people that are extremely interested in this stuff, and there are people that want to see if you go to Epstein Island and you rape kids, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, we want to see these people punished, right? And absolutely, I'm not in any way saying that that's not a valuable use of government resources. But when you hear people talk about, Epstein Island or the JFK files, do those things actually have the most tangible effect on an American's day-to-day life, or do you think that there are other things? Because it's my sense that the FBI's biggest, or the things that the FBI have done that are the most egregious, are when they were targeting people that prey outside of abortion clinics, or when they were targeting parents that were going to school, teacher meetings and saying that they're likely terrorists because they're worried about what their children are being taught. When they were targeting J6ers that were, granted, there were J6ers that did things that maybe they should have been looked into, but most of the vast majority of the people that were arrested and had charges, those people were doing things that are constitutionally protected, and the FBI were picking those people. I feel like those kind of things are the real, tangible, important things that the FBI needs to be. I guess there needs to be changes at the FBI because of those things. Again, it's not that I don't think that Epstein Island stuff is important, but that's not going to have tangible effects on real normal Americans. That's going to be the stuff that is feel good for partisans. And
it's the flashy stuff.
Yeah,
that's the big stuff. But so much of what Kash Patel could do is less. he could do less of what was being done. He could do less of the school. I mean, we did a lot of work on school boards on Long Island, and just to know that there were people out there from the FBI checking people's license plates because overzealous PTA moms yelled at people over masks and over curriculum. That's terrifying to me, particularly when, look, there are bad people in this country. There are, and they should be going after those people. They should be going after the people distributing bad stuff online, we'll say. You can take that however you want. There's so much stuff that they could be doing. Just revert that. And I think that's what Kash has talked a lot about, putting them out in the field and making them actual cops again, arresting actual bad guys.
Phil, I think you're right that it's hyper partisan to appeal to, like, we're going to uncover who's on the Epstein flight logs and we're going to tell you about Diddy, like what's on the Diddy tapes. Like that's hyper partisan, but it's also chronically online. Like normies don't think or care about those things. Yeah. So I agree with you on that. And something I've noticed, I think ever since the election, is that there's been a lot more reporting on school shootings and school shooting plots. Not only ones that ended up being executed, but ones that were stopped. There was a recent one, I forget which state, but there was a plot by yet another trans-identifying teenager to shoot up a school. And this is what you hear every time that headline comes out, is like the FBI was aware of this person and foiled the plot. But perhaps they were responsible for grooming that person in the first place into incriminating themselves.
Can you expand on that? Would you go and articulate what you mean by grooming? Do you think that the FBI is actually involved in trying to...
I mean, they're interested in convicting people, and to do that, I think they want to get into contact with these people online and probably radicalize them, but also get them to say incriminating things so that they can, stop the crime that they were planning, which they never would have planned in the first place had it not been for the influence of federal agents who are contacting them.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that's happened.
Also offering to supply them with illegal firearms.
Well, we saw that at things like Ruby Ridge. We saw that at the Gretchen Whitmer plot, where 9 out of the 12 guys were FBI agents. Mm-hmm. So if they spent a little bit more time, even if we're not talking nefarious, known to the FBI. All right, well, then maybe you should put 3 people on them and leave the school boards alone, and then maybe we could foil those plots. Maybe we could get those obviously very sick kids help before the plot gets, brought into fruition. And it's I just feel like the allocation of the resources of the FBI have been so used in the wrong way.
Can they stop infiltrating right-wing groups? Like, they're obsessed with it.
Can they or will they? I mean,
will they, now that Kash Patel is in charge? I don't know.
So in response to that, there's something that I've been mentioning on the show lately, and that's that we kind of live in a milieu of leftism, right? And that the air that we breathe is steeped in leftist ideology. And when you hear, the left is infiltrating right-wing organizations, the knee-jerk idea of right-wing, for normies at least, is bad. Mm-hmm. Right? There's an association of right is evil, and I think that if we do see a change at the FBI in that kind of demeanor, I think that would be a very good thing for the United States. I mean, an organization like Oath Keepers, unless they've actually done something, the only thing they're saying is we're going to keep our oath to the Constitution. The whole premise is we're going to abide by the law. And so to conflate that with knee-jerk evil, or even the left has managed to make a significant portion of the United States associate the word patriot with something negative.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's so, we've been talking a lot about this over the last several weeks, not only with the FBI, but with all the nonprofit stuff that goes on. Organizations like the ACLU, organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm on a Southern Poverty Law Center list. And to me, I'm just like, I don't know what I did to get on it. I don't know why I'm on it, but I've been denied jobs because of this stuff. Yeah, it's wild. When somebody first sent it to me, it was literally over the school board stuff. That's exactly what it was. So I want to know. I know Josh Hawley has talked about this with the SPLC, like figuring out where they're getting their funding from, who's paying for this, how much of it's coming from a for example, a USAID that gets funneled through a nonprofit that goes to an NGO that goes to another nonprofit. That stuff, if the FBI was really going to look into that, figuring out why it is that a nonprofit tied to Stacey Abrams somehow got $2 billion. If the FBI wanted to investigate those sorts of financial crimes, I think that would go a long way in stopping that machine that you're talking about from just equating right wing with bad. No matter what. I mean, the way they smear people, just, oh, he's on the right, like a Rogan or Tim or anybody. And it's like, no, they're not. Like, not traditionally. Not Mike Pence would not think anybody in this room is on the right. George Bush wouldn't think any of us are on the right. But sure enough, we all...
He might.
Maybe.
Elaad's on the right. Clearly. And the argument that I make that I have been making is because of the fact that we're so steeped in leftism. Anyone that's not left is immediately associated with the right. So that's why the discourse between Elon Musk about Elon Musk and Ashley St. Clair and stuff. People can have their opinions about that situation, but they're considered right wing. And then the conservative right was like, well, these people shouldn't be right. And it's like, well, they're not really right. They're actually center. They're not right leaning. It's just that we live in a milieu of leftism, and because of that, anyone not left gets associated with the right.
But you said that the other day, that there's a difference between right wing and not left.
Yeah,
and I think the not left is a lot of people. A lot of people come on this show who just go, you know what? I don't know what that is, but I don't want anything to do with that. So this is my only option.
Here, you going to say something?
Well, my point is that it's not the left infiltrating those right wing groups, or even groups that are unequivocally like identified as neo-Nazi groups. It is the FBI. And the way I see it, the FBI has been engaged in criminal behavior against the American people, so they're not going to investigate themselves. They're not going to incriminate themselves. They're only out to incriminate civilians and get civilians to incriminate themselves.
They
want convictions.
And I don't disagree with that, but if we do live in a milieu of leftism, just the FBI saying, oh, we're going to investigate, that means that it is kind of the left investigating, isn't it?
I don't know.
Didn't you say it?
I mean,
because if the
this is now an arm of the Trump administration.
Well, now, yes, but I'm referring to like pre Kash Patel,
Oh yeah.
Before.
Oh, definitely. Then it was the left being invested. It was the left investigating the right. When you had guys like Eric Holder say that he was Barack Obama's wingman, and now this CNN article, loyalist to Trump. I'm sitting there going, where were you? And that's why you talk about the milieu, and it's so watching it change in real time over the course of the last month. No leader on the left. They are completely listless. They have no idea which way is up, and that's why we're getting some of the most ridiculous things ever, like Margaret Brennan saying that free speech was used to start a genocide. And I'm like, what high school textbook did you read? Because you could go back to 6th grade, but because they have existed so long as the norm, when they are actually the far left, they can't see that they are losing the world to the center.
Yeah.
I think the big questions around Kash Patel is how he's actually going to run the FBI and who he's going to choose to go after. And I think how we could tell this stuff is actually what he came up on. So he sort of got his MAGA bona fides in the Nunes memo, where he helped explain and debunk different alleged Trump-Russian collusion that didn't really exist. And he helped expose that. That kind of earned him his early MAGA bona fides. And then he did a lot of press tour on that. While doing the press tour for that, one of the things that people fearmonger around that he said is that there's this one quote where people on the left and Democrats are mainly concerned about how they believe he will target a media. On the War Room, he said, "We will go out and find conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally, civilly, we'll figure that out." So I guess that's where the left fearmongers around. I don't truly think, I think he's going to be a fair FBI director. I don't think he's going to go after people unjustly. I think time will tell that. But I know he has a lot of bluster when he's on Steve Bannon's War Room, but I don't truly believe he would actually run the FBI like that. Once you have to get confirmed and get in a position of power, a lot of different things change. So things are different once you're out of the job, and kind of once you are in it, after you got the backing of people like Bannon. And
so is it your sense that he was not saying that he was saying things that he doesn't believe, but he would? Do you think that when he was in partisan or on partisan podcasts, he was kind of playing to the audience? Is that your sense?
I don't want to make him sound disingenuous. I think he believes what he believes, but once you get in the position to actually have to affect the change that he goes after. So, for example, in this quote, we will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. We'll figure that out. I don't actually foresee him actually coming after NBC or something. So, like Trump is often also like blusters against the media. I can't think of a direct quote of Trump, but I'm sure we could find it. But I don't foresee, sometimes you have to bluster a bit, and that's what I think he's done in the past on a lot of these issues. I think he'll be a fair FBI director, and I think he said he would judge people based on the facts when he had his confirmation hearings.
There's no righting past wrongs here, in my opinion. Just like with Trump being sworn into office, we have no idea the level of state secrets that he learned, past and present, going into that role. Similarly with Kash Patel, we have no idea the secrets that he has already or is about to learn by taking on that role, and the level of responsibility that comes with. It's incomprehensible, and I don't see any past wrongs being made right.
Mm-hmm. I guess for example, Democrats in the past have went after Donald Trump when he was running. Would you like to see Kash Patel try to just, what's the saying about a prosecutor could indict a rock? I don't know.
You can indict.
I'm the person, and I'll find you the crime. Kash Patel can find reasons to go after, I'm sure, different Democrat governors. There's a lot of slimy politicians out there. But I guess the question would be, is he going to go looking for things? Is he going to apply a different standard of the law to Democrats than Republicans? I don't think he should. I don't think he will.
Well,
would you guys like to see that? Or as a form of retribution, for example, I think is how Democrats fearmonger. So, they'd say, well, people in Joe Biden's administration went after Trump and different Republicans. Now it's time for retribution.
Isn't that the word that Trump used, though?
Yeah, he said
retribution.
He did say that.
He was like, I am your retribution. But,
but not Kash Patel.
Like you were saying, so great. But like you were saying, we've lived in leftism for so long that if we actually ran things down the middle, the left would accuse us of going after them because they have basically run free for so long. Then when the media goes on TV,
wait, would you like to see retribution out of Kash Patel?
No, but when he goes after someone who libels, when he goes after somebody who slanders somebody, when he goes after a media entity for just making things up about average citizens, it is going to feel like the DOJ is going after the media when really they should have been doing it all along.
It's not just going to feel like that. That's the narrative that you're going to hear.
Yep.
Any type of government action against a politician, they're going to characterize it as if it's politically motivated. I'm innocent. This is just Donald Trump coming after me. Look, he said retribution, et cetera, because they want to get the public on their side. And there's a portion of the public, possibly a sizable portion, a plurality, that will side with them no matter the evidence, no matter how damning the evidence is.
I mean, just take an Adam Schiff, right? Let's say Adam Schiff's been out there lying, making things up. We don't like him. All right. Let's say he's got a nephew who works for a nonprofit that's doing something wrong, and Kash Patel goes and investigates him in that. Adam Schiff now has provided himself the cover to go, look, what did I tell you? He's going to come after us.
I agree with you. Schiff will say that, but Schiff, I'm pretty sure he was censured as well.
Yeah.
So I mean,
he's just one example.
Everybody knows that Schiff is as shifty as it gets.
That was just one example, but there's so many of them. Like, if a media outlet goes after somebody and makes something up, and they're sued, and the DOJ goes after them, and they've actually done something wrong, everyone is now going to say, look, we told you this was going to happen. We told you Donald Trump was going to come after his enemies, when really they're actually just calling balls and strikes. But for the longest time, the umpire was betting on one team.
I guess, do you think he should be going after Trump's perceived enemies as retribution?
Not as
there's a fine line. I think he will be fair and an equal opportunist under the law, as he should be. And if he doesn't, people will actually lose more faith in the FBI than they already do so. The more partisan he will act as FBI director, we could anticipate it in the next Democratic FBI director.
I would push back on that in that I am of the opinion that the left is already going to be so partisan. We know that the left has what they will do because they tried to do it to Trump. They've already imprisoned their political opponents, their people based on politics. The whole January 6th was all because of politics. They've used the government against parents that would defy the Department of Education or what have you, the LGBT stuff in schools, parents that would go and protest that, and they'd have the FBI look at them. They've put people that have committed no crime onto the Quiet Skies list, which is essentially a no-fly list or extra screening, basically making it a hassle to do things. And I'm referring to Tulsi Gabbard, and she was a lieutenant colonel in the reserve, so it's not just someone
Literally a war hero.
Yeah, well, I mean, and ostensibly it was because she might be a risk to national security, but she's already been vetted with multiple times. She got security clearances. Like, lieutenant colonel is not a low-ranking officer. That's like an 05 or something like that. It's a fairly high ranking. You're in charge of a lot of people, and so that kind of scrutiny based on politics is the standard for the Democrats. So while I think you're right that I don't want to see the Republicans do it, I don't think that we have a new crop of Democrats that aren't going to behave that are going to behave differently.
Why don't you want to see the Republicans behave that way?
Because I want to see an actually legitimate government, because the things that they went after Republicans for, they didn't actually commit crimes. So if there's no crime, then I don't want the government going after people. If there's a crime, get them and use to the full extent of the law. But like Tulsi Gabbard committed no crime. The J6ers that were just walking around, they committed no crimes.
All right, wait, so Phil,
J6ers who just got pardoned or got their sentences commuted, they should actually receive financial reparations.
Yes, 100%.
But they're not going to.
The DOJ just awarded some Antifa guy $7 million in Portland. He threw a grenade at a cop, but sure enough, he threw an explosive at a police officer. They turned around and, did what you would expect they were going to do, and then ended up $7 million, please come do
come beat me up.
I think it's easy to talk in abstracts, but if we get specific, do you for example, do you think Kash Patel should investigate former President Joe Biden, for example, for maybe, what was the exact line, 10%, some amount for the big man? So things like that.
I mean, there's certainly enough evidence there to seek an indictment.
Do you believe so? So you think
absolutely.
Kash Patel should be going after people like Joe Biden for investigations?
I think there is no problem with investigations. I do not want anyone to concoct charges. I don't want anyone to fabricate. I don't want them to look at the person and find the crime. However, I mean, the fact that Republicans slow-walked this 10% for the big guy and the money coming from the Moscow mayor and all the Kazakhstan stuff, and the fact that they slow-walked that for 4 years so that they had talking points to run on rather than actually pursuing something is
Phil, do you think Kash Patel should investigate Joe Biden for his alleged crimes with percent for the big guy?
I don't think so, because I think that going after Joe Biden is a waste. Well, I think it's a waste of time because he's so old. I would say that they should go after his family, but he's pardoned them all.
Yeah.
For me, it's more about the truth than the retribution. I want to know exactly how much, because the media sat there and said this is not real. Meanwhile, we're all looking at the evidence going, then what is that? Oh, that's a conspiracy.
I guess my frame of mind here is that every president's dirty, and if we're just trying to sick our current FBI on the former presidents, I think we'll be finding a lot of dirt on a lot of our politicians. I hope that
I can understand that argument.
I hope they're serious. I mean, all crimes are serious crimes, but serious crimes that the FBI could be preventing. I don't know, some sort of domestic terrorism.
I would rather than doing that.
Speaking, you mentioned domestic terrorism. This is one more thing that I want to talk about the FBI that I don't know if you guys have thoughts on it or not, but I think that it's worth mentioning. If the federal government, if the Trump administration declares that the cartels are terrorists and they actually do start treating them like terrorists, and there will be some type of effort by the cartels to strike back at the United States, whether they be at the American people or whatever. And I think that the FBI will have or should have a significant role in wrapping up as many terrorists and as many cartel members, which would be considered terrorists, here in the United States as possible in order to protect the American people.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I hear most of the time when we talk about, or when I see the conversations on X and stuff like that about the administration calling the cartels terrorists is, oh, you don't know what the cartels will do. They'll blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be so bad. And there will be so many attacks and stuff. And I do think that there will be attempts at that. But I do think that the federal government has a pretty good line on who is and is not a criminal. And I think that the FBI can wrap them up and prevent a lot of the supposed or proposed attacks.
More of the designating them as terrorist organizations, I think that's more about federal allocation of resources, because that opens up a few more avenues for them to, like, I know on Long Island.
I think it's about airstrikes. I legit think
into Mexico?
Yes, I do.
Do you support those?
I don't know that I support it. But
I'm gonna have to think about that one.
I don't know that I support it, but I do think that, I mean, look, the CIA and stuff like that has dealt with narco traffickers before.
But that's the stuff we're trying to get away from.
No, it's not.
I think that's meddling in other countries.
That's not
like that.
That's not meddling in other countries' affairs, because they're directly affecting the United States. I understand we don't want to send military into the Middle East to decide who's going to be running Syria, right? I get that. But when it comes to Mexico and on our border, and the amount of narcos that are involved in the government, how many people died before they decided that they would let a president live? Was it 36 people that the narcos killed before the president before the Shabam got elected or whatever? So that the reason Shabam got elected or is alive is because the narcos said, okay, we'll let this one go.
I will say that
if that's the case, then it does make sense. And that's why the United States has said, hey, we're going to go ahead and declare them terrorists. And when I say airstrikes, I don't think they're going to be going after Mexican towns. Yeah. They're going to be it's going to be people finding the actual heads of the narcos and taking them out.
I will say, you think that the media and the left has lost their mind over the course of the last month? Let Donald Trump drone a coca plant in Mexico and just sit back and watch, because people will lose their minds.
These cartels are a total powder keg on our southern border, and beyond that, our country is deeply, deeply infiltrated with all of these different cartels and gangs, and I don't know if we'll be able to stomach, if a real conflict arises, the damage that these cartels will do to not only law enforcement, but civilians, and then also the damage done in Mexico on our border. How, the perfect way out of this, I don't know. This needed to be nipped in the bud a lot sooner than now. Like, we're kind of really deep in the game of Mexico essentially being a narco state. They're not really run by their government. Their institutions are very weak compared to the
point
cartels.
is, the military's on the border now. They put the Marine Corps on the border right now. Like, there are actual Marines, and they have a green light to engage should they be engaged by the cartels. It used to be where if the cartels shot, the Border Patrol had to get, duck and cover and don't return fire. The Marines are there.
So I'm more worried about that.
I'm not
more worried about armed.
Pro, but I've heard some stories in Mexico. It's like when you abduct one of these guys' sons, then the cartel punishes you by abducting, I don't know, the whole local government and all of their families and children, and then they end up releasing the child.
That was the reason. That was the reason I brought up the FBI and the FBI's. Does the FBI have the ability to actually wrap up? You said yourself, there's a bunch of narcos in the U.S. Does the FBI have the ability to find these people and protect the American people?
But do we not without regime change and taking over Mexico and literally nation building in Mexico? Then no, there's not a way to deal with this unless we were knee deep, even deeper in Mexico, because the second they leave, it'll continue to just be a narco state.
When you
have
cut
to
the head
occupy Mexico. if we wanted to do that. And I don't think that's something we want to do.
There's 100,000 Americans that have died a year from fentanyl and stuff like that. So do we just say, well, there's narcos and that's just the way that it is now?
Every overdose death is tragic, but I think it's distinct from a casualty from being shot up by a...
No,
but
I
like
think it's so different. It's not an overdose. It's a poisoning. And that's the difference because nobody, some guy goes out to a nightclub, takes too much stuff, ends up overdosing. That's an accident. Nobody is out there looking for the crap that's on the streets, right?
Dude, unfortunately, the crackheads in a lot of different areas of our country are looking for the craziest fentanyl. And actually, when somebody ODs on the stuff, that's actually
what's that new stuff they have?
It acts as like an ad to all the other crackheads. It's like, wow, he had this good stuff.
I get what you're saying, but that doesn't really answer my question. So I'm going to go to Mary. Mary, do you think that it should be that the U.S. should do nothing because the cartels are too dangerous? Because that's essentially the argument being made here. It's too dangerous to actually take the fight to the cartels because you don't win if you don't take the fight to the cartels. Mm-hmm. You either take the fight to the cartels or this continues. I mean, we can build a wall and we can stop it, but like you said, Elaad, they're here in the United States. If you don't take the fight to them, you don't fix the problem. Do you think that it's too dangerous?
Is that actually the risk assessment that you're making?
I don't think the choices were between invade Mexico and nothing.
I didn't say that. I said take the fight to the cartels.
Yeah.
Well, what would that mean in your estimate?
Not drone striking them, or
so possibly sending in.
I mean, it's chemical warfare. What they're doing. I agree. It's not accidental overdoses like that. It is poisoning. It's chemical warfare on the American people, and it should be met with some kind of lethal force.
The point that I'm making is we have, as a country, spent 25 years finding and dismantling terrorist organizations. The argument that's made when I say that is, you can never actually win the politics side. I don't think that we need to win the politics side. If you're sending special forces and terrorist, HRT teams and stuff in and finding the bad guys and wrapping them up. That's what they did to Noriega. That's what they did throughout the 80s and stuff. This isn't something that the United States has never done. And there were times where the violence in the United States was significantly worse. Now, granted, we might end up seeing more violence here, but you don't actually defeat an enemy by just saying it's dangerous to fight them.
Well, that's why I think that labeling them terrorist organizations is more about reallocation of resources, because I've seen many of these cartels and many of these Central American gangs. I'm talking about take over whole neighborhoods. They've taken over. We saw it with the Tren de Aragua in Colorado, Brentwood on Long Island.
That should have caused the governor to activate the National Guard and go in and take them out.
I think there's a big difference between that, which I would totally support, 100% support that, than active duty troops in.
I'm not talking about big army. I'm not talking about artillery. But when it comes to the way that you get those guys, it would be a similar thing to the way that they were dealing with terrorists overseas. It would be like, okay, they did it. I mean, dude.
Wait, I don't understand. Do you think taking out a few thousand cartel members would stop the drug trade? I mean, drug trafficking would continue. You'd have to have a sustained presence there. I don't know if troops on the ground is necessarily the answer. We need to figure out a way to embolden the Mexican government to police their country in a proper way.
Well, the first thing you need to do is get rid of the people that are making the decisions about killing Mexican politicians. If you it's
endless amounts.
I can
of
understand what he's saying. You just keep cutting the head off.
Gangster cartel member will just fill in the place.
Because
the demand is still there.
I understand the argument that you're making, but the United States has dealt with cartels like this before.
It doesn't feel like we've dealt with cartels in the past 50, 100 years in any productive way. The war on drugs was a huge failure. Yeah, but that's like we did regime change. Is that what you want to do here?
There was no regime change to do
for Noriega. Didn't we arrest him? And
we arrested him, but we didn't have to change governments to do it. We got the government to allow us to. We worked with the governments of the government of Colombia to do it. We didn't have to go in and take out the Colombian government.
I think the big problem is that sometimes when you cut the head off the snake, somebody else just pops
No,
in. I mean, we got
cartel is never going to end. The black market here isn't going to end. You need to address the market aspect of this and the Mexican government aspect of this. It's funny because I feel like I sound like an isolationist when it comes to this point. I do not want to get into some quagmire in Mexico on our border. I feel like that would be...
But like you said, I'm more worried about the armed conflict on the border between the cartels and the Marines that are down there.
So Noriega was actually he was actually the military dictator of Panama.
That's what it was. That's why I thought it was regime change. We did regime change with Noriega.
But you mentioned.
So wait, do you want to do?
But he mentioned El Chapo, and we wrapped him up.
Yeah, but
El Chapo,
but it didn't change anything with El Chapo. Just another person filled his place. The drug crisis didn't end with El Chapo. It's only gotten a lot worse, actually. Arresting El Chapo, actually, some people would argue, made it a lot worse.
So long as there's a market for drugs in America, someone will get it here.
Well, unless the Mexican government is emboldened to actually enforce their laws, but they're not because they're a narco state. Though I'm sure we've tried to get the Mexicans to do it, and they haven't.
Why are you sure of that?
Because administration after administration has put effort into it, but we need to incentivize their government to do it.
Do you have evidence of that, or because I'm not so sure
the Mexican government has tried. Well,
no, that the United States has tried to convince the Mexican government, because the United States has many soft power methods they could go ahead and I mean, we're talking about tariffs right now. And tariffs that has made Mexico stand up and be like, oh, this is a problem for us. There are a lot of soft power and actual military power.
I think the Mexican government actually, I have conflicting views. It's kind of beyond of repair too at this point. I don't know where that really leaves us.
So that's to the point. So then and that's why I asked you, do you think that we should just leave it as it is?
Keep the powder keg. Don't shoot up the powder keg yet. I don't know. Let it keep accumulating. Again, there's no perfect solution here. I know a problem also that we need to consider is how China's heavily involved in this as well, because they provide many of the precursor chemicals to the Mexicans. So they're working hand in hand with these other criminals. Generally, I believe that we need a reinvigoration of the Monroe Doctrine. Trump's kind of doing some of this stuff with what we're trying to do in Panama. Maybe we can make Mexico great again as well.
It sucks because I think it would be easier to just diminish the demand in America by making things a little bit better and giving 20-somethings a purpose to live rather than going out and doing drugs all day.
I think
long.
that
I think that might be easier than fixing.
I thought you were going to say the legalization card, because many people say legalize, heroin.
Something about that don't feel right.
Look at California. I used to be a very much pro, hey, if we just decriminalize these things and stuff, that it will, it'll take care of itself. But there's a lot of things that have to happen in conjunction with that, and you're not going to get a government to say, okay, nationwide castle doctrine, and we'll decriminalize drugs, and if someone is using drugs outside of your house, you can go out there and take care of the problem yourself. And it takes that kind of it takes property rights more than just, we're going to go ahead and decriminalize drugs and then provide needles to people, because then you end up with California.
Yeah,
and that's clear. It's clearly a problem in California. So we're going to go on to the this next story, though. Donald Trump wants to abolish the IRS and replace it with tariffs. Can it work? I like the idea personally, but I'm not exactly the most educated on economics. But I do like the idea of getting rid of the IRS and getting rid of the income tax, because I think that the idea of making the American people pay for making money is bad, and I think that there are other ways to generate income for the federal government. And from CNN, no one wants to pay taxes, and practically every American dislikes the IRS. But as the saying goes, the only guarantee in life are death and taxes. So the IRS is here to stay, right? Well, maybe not, according to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Donald Trump announces the External Revenue Service, and his goal is very simple: to abolish the Internal Revenue Service and let the outsiders pay, Lutnick said on Fox News Wednesday night. In other words, America will raise so much money from President Donald Trump's tariff plan that the Americans will no longer need to pay income taxes. This sounds great, but it's riddled with problems. Now, I do think the idea sounds great. I would love to see tariffs take care of the funding for the American government. I believe that tariffs were the majority of the way that the United States used to raise money prior to the income tax in 1913. Thank you very much, Woodrow Wilson, you bastard. Burn in hell.
Easily the worst president ever,
He is the worst president.
both in practice and morality.
Absolutely. But what do you think? Do you think that there is do you think this method would work, or do you think that it's a pie in the sky?
Well, I think it's a pie in the sky and that it would work. The reason why is because I want to be clear. If we have built so many systems now that rely on such an intense tax revenue that if we just pulled the Band-Aid off, it would absolutely blow out the deficit. It would eventually work itself out over time. But I think you guys were talking about this the other day about income taxes and how the rich don't pay their fair share. And income tax.
So glad Elaad's not here.
I know.
You should come back. And
I waited for him to leave, actually. But income tax actually benefits rich people because, as we know, they don't pay an income. They don't take an income. They got dividends and they got holdings and everything. If we got rid of the income tax and brought some sort of a VAT tax, a value-added tax, where you pay, we'll use a random number. You pay 10% tax on your milk and 10% tax on your yacht. That's actually a fair tax, as opposed to, a guy of Bezos, Musk, that, they have a $1 salary while all of us are sitting here paying 42%, and they're just living the high life. And to me, I'm thinking to myself, this is actually, it's going to make things a little bit more expensive, but it's going to make things a hell of a lot more fair. And, I think that would allow people, look, you want to buy your McMansion? I got no problem with that. You're going to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about I don't know if a value-added tax is. I'm not sure what the definition of value-added tax is.
It's basically just like it's basically
like a sales tax,
like a sales tax on
consumption
everything.
tax.
Yeah,
because I like the idea of a federal consumption tax, because then you're not charged for saving money, you're not charged on making money. It depends on how much you spend, and if you want to go out and buy a yacht, well, then there's going to be a percentage of whatever you spend. The U.S. GDP is $29 trillion or something like that, gross domestic product. So if you had a percentage of the GDP coming in as a tax on sale, some kind of sales or value added or whatever you want to call it, I do think that the government could be funded. I also think that the government could probably cut their actual expenditures by a significant amount. And hopefully something like Doge is going to do that. But I do think that that's something that's worth discussing. Elaad, do you have thoughts on a value-added tax, or on getting rid of the IRS, or on tariffs? Or
we were just talking about you and you.
I'm not sure that tariffs would be able to make up for the shortfall.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, okay, Serge is pointing out, so that means tariffs would have to be at least 100% on all imported good for tariffs to replace income taxes. I mean, this is CNN, and I don't expect CNN to have a positive outlook towards.
I don't think solely tariffs would be able to fund our government. Look, I don't love taxes. We live in a society.
Tariffs bold stance a lot. I don't like taxes.
Also, tariffs. It depends on how you view tariffs. Tariffs are actually a tax on you because they make products more expensive for you.
Well, there's arguments about that, but go ahead.
No, I mean, right. So if an item that it's to de-incentivize even buying it to begin with, but it's like, for example, I don't know, you buy a fancy shirt. If there's a tariff on a fancy shirt from Italy, 500% tariff, that money you'd have to pay for it to buy it, and then that money would go to the government. Still feels like a tax to me.
But here's the thing: is that the person buying that expensive Italian shirt,
or it's anything
can
abroad.
Afford it anyway?
No, you buy any item abroad because that's what the tariff would be, right?
Well, look, if you look at a picture of Japan and you look at their cars, it's going to be all Japanese cars. And if you look at a picture of Europe, it's going to be all European cars. And if you look at a picture of America, it's all Japanese and European cars. Why is that? And I
feel like that's an argument for America, if anything, because Europe's a dump and Japan's dying. So if anything, it sounds like the U.S. is more successful importing those Japanese cars and European cars, allowing Americans to buy cheaper-made cars. I prefer American ones.
What I'm saying is that Europe and Japan makes American cars more expensive so that they buy Japanese and German cars. So
we do the same thing.
Not on all of them.
Many of them.
I guarantee you, if you go to Munich right now, you will not see an F-150.
Okay, so for example, Chinese EVs don't exist in the United States. We could argue about why.
Yeah.
I mean, no, we don't need to. It's because we banned them, and the tariff makes it too outrageous to buy.
Yeah.
So
that's China, not Japan.
Sure. Well, I guess I'm kind of explaining to you guys the principle of what's going on here. Our free markets benefit you. Being able to buy goods from people worldwide is a benefit to you. It makes it more difficult for American salesmen who have to compete, and American businesses who have to compete on a worldwide market, but it makes it better for the purchaser.
But what it also does is it also helps the multinational corporation export their jobs overseas because they know they can bring it back in with no tariffs. And, this is a long game sort of thing. This is not going to be an easy fix. But the fact remains is that there are so many companies that have fled, even with things like NAFTA, where all the Detroit motor companies all just made them in Mexico, brought them back over, paid slave wages, and they're making big bucks. And this is where I think the populist left and the populist right can actually come together. If you're an American company and you're going out of your way to screw over American workers, then you need to be punished.
I think it's a nice populist message, but if we get to the crux of the issue, it's affordability. So, I mean, we obviously can't tell what would have happened otherwise. But, for example, here's my fancy iPhone. I still paid around $700-800 for it. And this is from components sourced from around the planet. And it's actually amazing that this product could even exist or do the cooperation of millions of different Americans across the planet. But how much would this cost if it was purely American made? Nobody would be able to have financial access to it. Nobody would be able to afford this.
They might not be able to afford to get the new one every single time. Maybe you skip an iPhone or two.
No, it would be
this one is no different
times,
than
4 times. Again, remember the slave labor you were talking about? This was made with Chinese slave labor. Could you imagine how much it would cost if we had to pay for American unions to make parts like this? It wouldn't be comparable. So a lot of the products that we have that we sort of take for granted. Look, that's not to say that there aren't issues with different multinational corporations and then, shipping different jobs overseas. But I think there's a balancing act of trying to understand the consequences of these policies. So free trade is what allows us to have this tech and other product revolution.
See, I think there's a balancing act between the corporation and the American consumer where, look, Apple, I love my iPhone. This thing has changed the world. But you know what? Maybe, just maybe, you might have to, Apple as a corporation should take for the good of America and for moral reasons, maybe the company should take a little bit of a hit on their bottom line, on their quarterly earnings and say, you know what? You're right. We probably could make this overseas for nothing, but I think more Americans would buy it if we made it here.
If American phones were made in America, not more people would.
Yes, the first car company.
How much more the iPhone would cost?
I am telling you right now that if the CEO of Ford came out during the Super Bowl with a commercial and said, look, guys, we did ship our jobs overseas.
Americans don't give a crap about this not being made in America. Every American has an iPhone already, and it doesn't matter if it were made here. Not more Americans would have iPhones. Less would, because they would be 5 times more expensive.
So we'll use cars.
It would be unfathomably
the first American car company.
Slave labor is what produces these iPhones, remember?
It's not just slave labor. It's the fact that you can send it over there and have it be made and then send it back. And all of that transport cost is still less in the United States. You could actually take a lot of the regulations and get rid of them in the United States, and a lot of the problems that you get with unions and stuff, and the cost of producing these things would go down. But that's not something that you hear anyone actually discussing very often. Regulations are a significant contributor to the cost and the prohibition, or not prohibition, but the hurdles to producing things in America.
I mean, look, I was saying it before, the first American car company, Ford, GM, Chevy, to come out and say, look, our cars are going to be a little bit more expensive, but we're going to make them here. And we're going to
different era.
I guarantee you, the first company that does that, there will be a pickup truck of that company at every construction site. Every soccer mom will be driving around in whatever SUV that company has.
No, they won't, because they won't
buy American.
They won't be able to afford it, unfortunately.
People want to buy American.
At 3, 4, 5 times the price?
But you're making up that.
No.
That
How much, again, this technology, you're saying that slave labor is involved.
So let's start with
this
cars.
Stuff. People, we pay them pennies on the dollar.
The company is going to have to take a little bit of a hit.
No, the people would, because that's who's going to pay for it.
It's a give and a take.
Look, I mean, there are Teslas that are made in the United States.
Yeah.
right? Like
There are some BMWs
They're
made in
heavily
Georgia.
subsidized, both here and when they're also built in China.
Well, they're heavily subsidized, but there's also massive regulations and there's unions that you have to deal with as well.
Right.
So we could probably get rid of the subsidies if you got rid of the same regulations and the union.
Yeah, that's the
and there's competition. Well, I mean, look, dude, you can smirk and kind of smile. about
No,
it, but,
because it's not. I don't think you're doing a fair example. Because again, Tesla gets a ton of its parts and its workers abroad, and like the
the
downstream
workers that are working in America. You think?
Phil, so a lot of the parts that Tesla.
Elaad.
So a lot of the parts that Tesla uses in the building of their cars, it's a global market. These items, these microchips, these all these processors.
I'm aware that
are,
no one
so
can
the
make a
price would-
pencil. Elaad. I'm aware. I'm aware that no one can make no one person can make a toaster. No one person can make a sandwich. I know that the market. I know that there's a market out there, and that it's the market that makes it possible for all the parts to be put together. That's not saying that you couldn't make things in America, though.
I'm saying you can. It would just be a magnitude of order more expensive.
Based on the current structure of everything right now. You're forgetting that we could change the way things are. I agree with you. I understand your point. I totally do. But I'm saying that I think what he's trying to say is we should change the way that it works around here so that we have the ability to allow for American companies with incentives, which is the correct way to get people to do stuff, not by subsidizing stuff. You subsidize, you kill. Don't do that.
Yeah.
You incentivize American business to make things here for cheaper so that, like you said, you can have American-made cars and you don't have to have all these crazy send everything across the country or send it across the world. Then we don't have to have a Navy taking care of everything. I also understand, though, that we need to have a Navy there. I also believe in our 11 carrier groups because they're sweet. But I also think that I see your point. I think what we're trying to say is we don't have to do things the way we always have done. There's a bias to want to do things the same way you've always done. You don't have to do that. You can do things differently, and we can radically change stuff. Look what we've been doing. So I understand what you're saying. It would cost more to do in America if you're basing off the current structure right now. But
People
also
live
change that,
paycheck to paycheck
I'm
right
aware.
now.
I'm aware.
People are complaining, right? There are issues with the rising prices of eggs. Now we're talking about these tariffs again that would affect the consumer in a negative way. I feel like there's a misunderstanding of what the tariffs are because, again, I still believe it's the purchaser who ends up paying the tax for it. Okay, I know that was a whole topic that we were hitting on there. If Trump is able to implement it properly, Trump has done, flipped the table on a lot of different policy proposals and how we handle things. Maybe we could check it. I have faith in Trump.
All right, we'll come back and we will chat about it.
All right, so we're going to go on to this next story. Donald Trump, the Trump administration can continue mass firings of federal workers, judge rules, which is something that we have been discussing to some extent on the show lately about whether or not the executive has the authority to fire the bureaucracies or bureaucrats, people in the bureaucracy, or whether or not the bureaucracies actually are in control of the government. The Guardian reports the Trump administration can, for now, continue its mass firings of federal employees. A federal judge ruled on Thursday, rejecting a bid by a group of labor unions to halt Donald Trump's dramatic downsizing of the roughly 2.3 million strong federal workforce. The ruling of the U.S. District Court Judge Christopher Cooper in Washington, D.C. federal court is temporary while the litigation plays out. But it is a win for the Trump administration as it seeks to purge the federal workforce and slash what it deems wasteful and fraudulent government spending. Now, actually, I'm going to try and look this up. I saw Stephen Miller talking today during the what's it called, the press briefing, and he had a great breakdown of this situation. I'd like to play it for you guys if I can find it, and I retweeted it, so it shouldn't take too long.
You have a sick timeline, Phil. In a good way.
You have a great timeline.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go ahead. Here we go.
For 4 years, failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers at the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
Now, I mean, this is something that used to be obvious to people. The idea that the federal government is actually should be led by the people that are elected, and the argument being made now, based on the these hearings that the Trump administration is bringing to courts, and that's, I think, the intent of a lot of the things, whether it be the question about the 14th Amendment, where he decided that people no longer had birthright citizenship, which is going to end up in front of the Supreme Court, and this stuff. This is all about getting the power back to the elected representatives, and Stephen Miller broke it down great. The point of the elected representatives, if you don't like them, you can get rid of them. And a bureaucracy that is protected by unions, and when you can't fire people, that means that regardless of who's in office, you can't have any kind of you can't satisfy your gripe. You can't get your arguments or your problems taken care of by electing someone else, because it's the same people implementing the same policies regardless of who's actually in charge. So I think this is something that we're all generally in agreement on, but if you guys have any input on this, I'd like to hear it.
Was this his rebuttal to people who voted for Trump saying, hey, I didn't vote for Elon Musk, why is he in the Oval Office all the time?
That's one of the things.
Because it's like Elon is Trump's shadow now, and I find it very creepy and unsettling, and I think he's deeply untrustworthy.
So
that's not the will of the people.
Well, I would.
The people who voted for Trump did not vote for Elon. And also, how much money did Elon give Trump? Like
over 250 billion.
Million, right?
Billion.
Million.
Let me actually look that up.
I think he's only worth.
It was like something like around $300 million.
Paid $44 billion for X, bro.
Okay.
It was a few $100 million, and that was because he could stand to benefit, and his interests are much different from the interests of those who voted for Trump. They were interested in issues like securing the border, mass deportations, getting inflation under control. Those are not the same as Elon's interests.
So I'll expand on that. You don't think that the
he wants benefits for his business.
So how does Doge, the work that he's doing with Doge, how does it benefit Elon Musk?
Well, I mean, I think that he donated to Trump's campaign so that he could have influence over Trump's decisions for the next 4 years.
So you think, well, okay, so
he wants deregulation in his area of business.
I do think that he does have the incentive to have deregulation in at least with the FAA and with his ability to send rockets to space. I agree about that. I don't think that the motivation. I don't think that
Personally,
the average.
I think that's why Trump changed his tune on H-1B visas.
That could be.
Well,
but I don't think that Musk is. I definitely don't think that Musk is controlling Trump. And I mean,
he has some control over Trump. He gave Trump a few $100 million.
I mean, just because.
Okay, why would he do that if it didn't mean he could have some control?
Because it's
just because he felt
influence
strongly about it.
Influence is different from control. They're not the same. Influence no, it's not. It's totally not. Control means you're in charge. Influence means you can actually talk to the person and get your opinion in their ear. It's totally different. Influence is not control. Those are two totally different meanings. And then as for his whether or not he wants to change regulation, yes, I agree about that. I do think that he wants to see less regulation on things like on SpaceX and stuff like that, because he can't get rockets into space at the tempo that he wants to with the way that the FAA looks at SpaceX. So I agree with you there. But I don't think that the work that he's doing when it comes to things like this, right, firing of federal workers and stuff like that, I don't know how that actually benefits Musk personally.
I don't know how I feel about him trying to cut costs in the federal government when he wants the federal government to subsidize his company.
Yeah, you understand
that doesn't make sense to me.
You understand that he doesn't actually have any power to make cuts. An audit is just making recommendations, and then the president has to say yes.
Okay, sure. I just don't think anyone donates hundreds of millions of dollars to a presidential campaign not thinking it gives them power.
I think, like I said, I agree that
that's real power.
I agree that he assumes that he has influence. That
he's correct. That is not just an assumption. That is correct.
Okay, and again, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing about that. I don't. But what I'm talking about is stuff like this, because the topic that we're kind of talking about right here is whether or not the executive has the power to fire people in the bureaucracy.
Yeah, I don't think that's the real issue at hand here. I think there are multiple true things here at the same time. But before I even get into those details, I want to say, Mary, I actually think you're completely spot on and kind of brave to say that, because now I feel like you can't, nowadays, if you say something bad about Elon, he kind of built this
people jump down your throat
personality around him. But I think everything you said is kind of plain and obvious, and like, I don't know how people would debate otherwise. Like, he was Trump's biggest donor. I looked it up. It was $290 million. There's conflicts of interest all across the board. And I mean, he could gish gallop his way into different things. So this affects me, this doesn't. But like, he won't be able to actually go through all the individual business dealings. I guess the real issue at hand here is that it's a creepy relationship.
What do you mean?
Wait, if I could finish 1 second. Elon Musk and Donald Trump have a creepy relationship. It should be concerning, and like I think there's some validity to people who are concerned about this relationship. Steve Bannon was actually one of the first guys on the right to say something about this. I think there will be a rift in that. Trump does. It's a very odd relationship. There was a recent interview that he did with Sean Hannity, where Sean Hannity had both of them on together. There was a weird dynamic. Steve Bannon issued a warning to conservatives and Republicans, saying Elon Musk is one of the oligarchs who will abandon us. And I mean, like, on certain top issues that are really important to MAGA, he already has abandoned us on. So, for example, like the H-1B visa stuff. So I think there's a lot of valid concerns around Elon Musk, and we shouldn't just sweep this all onto the table. There's so many conflicts of interest between SpaceX, Tesla, his interests in China. He has so many Tesla mega factories in China. They're like, we don't even fully understand the depth of conflict of interest that Elon Musk has. And I feel like wading through it is so difficult to a point where it's impossible.
I understand that. So you both have a kind of, I mean, essentially, for lack of a better term, you both kind of have the ick about it, right? And that's fine.
It's kind of a strange relationship that the richest person on planet Earth donated the highest amount ever donated to a political campaign, and then he's benefiting from it in one way or another. That's not to say Elon Musk could be doing some good work with
things like in one way or another. Then it loses any kind of ability to actually debate it. You're just like, well, he's benefiting in one way or another. If you can't articulate how you think he's benefiting, and that's what I'm
because he has a conflict of interest. No, I'm like,
what do you think is a conflict of interest?
He gets government contracts, and now he's involved in cutting some aspects and not others, and he's getting this sort of influence in the halls of powers behind the scenes with a lot of these players.
Hold on. I think that you guys have this all wrong. I think, and look, I want to be clear. I wish we had money out of politics like this. However, I'm going to play the same rules as the Democrats. They want to take hundreds of millions from Zuckerbucks and George Soros. I'm going to take hundreds of millions from Elon. Until we change the rules, I'm going to play the same rules as everybody else.
What does Elon get for his money?
I have no idea.
What do you think he gets for his money? Do you get anything? No, wait. What do you? I told you there's a conflict of interest here. You don't think he gets anything for the $300 million?
I absolutely think he does.
You think there's conflicts of interest with Elon Musk?
When there is a conflict of interest, I will absolutely call it out. But the fact, but right now, I have yet to see any of that. I know that when NASA screwed up and left 2 astronauts in space, the first thing they did was call Elon and say, "Hey, can we get your help to go rescue these guys?" So to me, I would rather spend the money on whatever Elon Musk is doing as far as SpaceX or Tesla, which I mean, Tesla's just awesome. I would much rather spend the money on that than the absurd waste, than the comic books in Peru, than any person who's ever worked in a government agency. any person who's worked for the government knows you could cut 20% of the workforce and not notice.
Can all these things be true at once, though? I agree with these
absolutely.
cuts. He might be cutting things in proper ways. There may be good things that he's doing, but I think the conflict of interest and then the political contributions getting
What's the negative outcome that you're afraid of?
undue influence by the richest people in our country in
influence
politics.
isn't an outcome.
But that's nothing
Influence isn't
new.
an
What do you-
outcome.
and the conflict of interest that are downstream from that, like.
So, but what is it that you think is going to Musk is going to?
okay,
I
so-
was say my main worry is that Elon Musk is a transhumanist,
Okay.
technological accelerationist. And I do think that he has a certain animosity toward the American people because he is not American. And that's very clear by the absolute naked vitriol that he threw at Americans who are against H-1B visas. The way that he spoke to them in that moment said everything about who he is. I think even the way that he conducts himself in his personal life says everything about the type of person that he is and that he's untrustworthy.
So okay,
And he has the most influence over the president.
I agree with
than
you about
anyone.
I agree with you about all the transhumanist technology stuff. That's all there. I think that's
He wants to shoot us into space so we can live underground in pods on Mars.
so okay. So I don't think
And then
any of that.
also,
I
like,
don't think
grow
any,
babies
yeah.
in laboratories.
So I get what you're
Like,
saying,
it's
and I know
evil.
exactly
He's like an actual
Okay, but Mary, hold on.
supervillain.
I get what you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from. I understand your argument. I understand where it's coming from. The point that I was making from Elaad was to get some kind of articulation more than I get the ick.
He has conflict of interests. I don't think he actually holds our values, and he's just using MAGA as a vehicle for his own interests. So that's how I explicitly believe. And for example, the H-1B visas. This is something that MAGA diehards know are all on the same page about. But for some reason or another, Elon Musk isn't, and then Trump flips on a dime on this issue. Trump, the unfortunate thing is that Trump is actually able to be influenced by money. It's not unique to any politician, and Trump's a politician here. So, for example, another issue, Trump flipped on the TikTok ban. Many people have questions as to why he flipped on that. Well, Jeffrey Yass, he has a large ownership stake in ByteDance, who is the parent company of TikTok. He stopped donating to Trump at one point. They rekindled their relationship, and now Jeffrey Yass's support was donated millions to Donald Trump as well. And then he suddenly changed his tune on TikTok. So I don't think...
Well, I think on some of those things, I think what Donald Trump does, he puts the idea out there, gauges public reaction, and then makes his decision. And so that a lot of people were, I'm talking...
Do you think Jeffrey Yass had anything to do with, and his donations to Trump had anything to do with Trump flipping his decision to ban TikTok?
See, but here is how I'm going to answer this, and it's not a deflection. It's going to sound like it is. Until you can prove that... until there is proof that his donations had an impact. Until there's proof that Elon Musk subsidies are actually...
He wasn't donating to him,
Elon Musk-
and then Trump was for banning TikTok. He stopped. He wasn't donating to him. He started donating to him, and then Trump flipped on this issue that he was outspoken about.
Because I think a lot of people were against it.
Don't you think that Donald Trump is more pliable when it comes to stroking his ego than monetarily? Donald Trump is unique in politics in that I think that you can actually get more out of Donald Trump by telling him that his hair is nice and
You
telling
stroke
him
his
he's
ego
smart.
with the money. Trust me, he still likes the
I don't
hundreds
trust you.
of millions.
I think
donated
that
to
I
him.
really do think that the situation, because I don't not that Donald Trump doesn't need money to donations and stuff like that, but I really do think that Donald Trump is far more pliable when it comes to getting people to like him than when it comes to actual money donations. If you give Donald Trump money and then you insult him, he's not
Yeah,
going to
but
let
Phil,
that.
you're arguing. The
Elaad,
issue here is you're arguing in the abstract, and I'm trying to give you guys specific examples.
But you haven't yet.
You haven't given any specifics
No,
at all.
okay,
I
so-
asked Mary, and she was able to articulate
Wait, so
point
I'm
by
trying
point.
to
You're
give you-
kinda
okay,
like,
so
well, he gives me
here's
the
this
ick.
I kind of want to hear more about
specific
that transhumanism thing.
That's Neuralink, man.
that's
That's
perfect.
totally
That
Neuralink.
scares the crap
He,
out of
he
me.
literally wants to sew the internet into our brain.
There is nothing on earth I want less than that. I like taking this and putting it on the other side of the room for like an hour.
The way that he describes it is simply that, like, right now the interface for everyone's already a cyborg, and it's just that the interface is slow because your phone is you're using your thumbs. And his argument. No, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, Mary. But his argument is that the interface, if you can speed up the interface by having a chip in your brain, which is what Neuralink is, that people will take the next step to become transhuman and cybernet. He's absolutely that.
There's no way. There's no way that ends well.
Well, I mean, look, I don't.
There's no way it
He
ends.
is someone who wants to conquer human nature, who wants to basically abolish death, and also have complete technological control over human reproduction.
Do you think that he wants to control it, or do you think that he looks at it like that's what he thinks that human beings should be able to do?
I mean, he is that preeminent figure, isn't he?
I don't know that he has that kind of desire for control.
No?
Nah, I
He's
don't.
the richest man on the planet.
He's
is
the
that
rich-
just
but the
something
rich-
that happens
he's-
by accident?
He's the richest man on the planet, but he's the richest man on the planet by taking like really, really, really big risks about things that he believes in. Whether or not you agree with him, like you can totally disagree, and that's fine. But like he believes that climate change is something that's important to worry about, so that's why he started Tesla. And he believes that it's possible for an asteroid to come and wipe out all of humanity. That's why he thinks we need to be multiplanetary. He believes that it's important for people to have access to the internet, no matter what their government says. That's why he started why he started Starlink.
He believes in free speech, which is why he
bought
X.
X.
Why he bought X for
and now X is just a garbage dumpster fire of
I think-
a
well,
social media
It's
platform.
so much more fun now.
it's always
No,
been
it's
that.
not. It used to be way more fun
always
back
been
when
that.
Jack Dorsey ran it, and I stand on that.
always
Yes,
been
it was. It was always more fun when you knew you could get in
Anything-
trouble for saying something funny. And now everything on X is just brain rot slop.
Damn, Mary, you're #1 Musk hater right now.
I am. I have Elon derangement syndrome.
And you're spot on with your Twitter take and your Musk take, so.
yeah.
Twitter's so much more fun now.
No, it's
no,
really
it's-
not.
yeah,
it's
it's really
really
the
not.
dump.
It
You need
sucks.
to re-examine.
It's
When
just
Elaad
a
is telling you
giant
that you're right, you
dump.
need to re-examine.
It's a giant dump of bot accounts, pornography, and clickbait, and
Other than those first two, we can get rid of those.
people engagement farming. That's basically all it is
Totally.
now. And
What do you
people
notice
are
about
getting
this?
arbitrarily censored based on Elon Musk's personal tastes.
Totally. Spot on. He's not a free speech absolutist.
I
He's free
actually-
speech when it benefits him. And
I have
and then when
questioned
somebody's
whether
saying
I should
something he
even
doesn't
tweet
like, yeah.
these certain opinions about Elon in case it throttles my algorithmic reach. That's not a free speech platform in the slightest.
Well, I think it's better. Look, you're definitely not wrong, but I think it's better than it was, where people were arbitrarily booted off and no one knew why from one side.
Well, I think
Elon sent. He probably sent it. He probably boots people, but I think it goes across the spectrum. I just
Please
wish.
then, you had actual human conversation instead of robots.
I wish that there was more transparency on it.
You don't feel like you have human conversations now?
No,
I mean,
I think a lot of people are completely botting their accounts, and there are a lot of bot accounts that are promoting Trump and Elon.
And others, but yeah, I totally think that there's definitely foreign and domestic influence campaigns going on rampant on
And other
Twitter
than that, it's
especially.
gambling ads, it's pornography, it's like stupid power washing videos and whatever, AI generated crap.
I definitely watched those.
That's not
Stolen
my.
content, ripped from other people's reporting.
That's not my experience at all. I mean, I follow a lot of people, so I think that my.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because a lot of people joined Twitter after Elon bought it, so they don't know what it was like before. But I saw way more organic content and organic human conversation than I do now before he owned it. And it was a lot more fun. I had a Twitter account as early as 2015. And it was way more fun because people actually... It was people talking. And yeah, you got censored arbitrarily. It happened to me. But... even that added a bigger appeal to to the platform, honestly.
Dodging the bans, you're like, let's see if I can skirt this issue. All right, well, listen, we're going to jump to this next story here, and it's some international news. It's about Donald Trump, and I think that it actually speaks to the thing that I said about how you can actually get along with what it's like to try to get along with Donald Trump. From NPR. Reversing U.S. policy. Trump attacks Zelensky, blames Ukraine for a war with Russia. Now, I mean, I'm going to say right out front, it's not Zelensky's fault that Putin invaded, the whole thing is Barack Obama's fault for telling Medvedev that Putin could go in after his election.
Yep.
It was when Barack Obama said to Medvedev, he said, tell Vladimir that after my election, I will have more latitude. And after the election, that's when the little green men started showing up in Crimea. That's when Putin went into Crimea and took Crimea. It was because he understood Barack Obama as saying, the U.S. will not get involved. You can go in after my election. So it's not because of Zelensky, it's because of Barack Obama.
And look, I want to be very clear. I have no doubt who the bad guy is here. However,
Barack Obama.
I feel like that's the answer to a lot of that. I know who the bad guy is, Barack Obama. But no, look, obviously Putin's not a great guy. Obviously, he shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. But I think the Trump angle is just the same way he looks at everything else differently. We've been doing foreign policy with Russia the same way since the end of World War II, and we have gotten virtually nowhere.
Yeah. Let me go ahead. The NPR reports Washington and Kiev. For the past 3 years, the U.S. has been Ukraine's leading supporter in its war with Russia. Yet with a series of blunt comments, President Trump is now sounding more aligned with Russia than Ukraine. Trump, writing on social media, used his strongest language to date in describing Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, a dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. With limited room for maneuver, Zelensky has said relatively little, but he did strike a nerve when he said Wednesday that Trump seems to be living in a Russian-created disinformation space. It's my sense, and I think we talked about this a little bit at the very beginning of the show, it's my sense that Donald Trump wants to see Europe actually pay for the defense of Ukraine because Europe has the most to lose. European nations have been living off the United States military protection for the better part of 60, 75 years, something like that, since the end of World War II. The United States has taken the lion's share of role in making NATO an intimidating force. There's been a lot of it has been intentional because the United States didn't want to see nuclear proliferation throughout Europe. The United States was trying to keep every country in Europe from getting nuclear weapons because that's just a recipe for disaster. But the U.S. spends out of our GDP is like $29 trillion. The U.S. spends 3.6% of our GDP on our military. I think the NATO agreement is every country in NATO spend 3% of their, is it 2?
2, yeah.
It's 2% of their GDP on national defense, on their military, which in net dollars is vastly less than the United States, and they don't even meet their requirements to be in NATO, and they haven't forever. The United States used to spend 15%. In 1953, the United States was spending 15% of our GDP, and it's been going down ever since. Like I said, now it's about 3.6 or something like that. But the rest of Europe, who is the most threatened by Russia, won't even pay for their own militaries. They won't actually spend the money on their military. They've been living under the U.S. protection, the United States protections for all of the Cold War and since. And now it's time for the European nations to actually spend the amount of money that they're supposed to spend on their own defense. And I think that that's the whole goal. Now, there's personal animosity between Zelensky and Trump. When Zelensky went to Pennsylvania with Josh Shapiro during the election, that definitely pissed Trump off. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with him actually having a problem with that. Why a foreign country that we've been sent just shoveling money into has their president come and actually pick sides in an election? It's a bad look. And I don't think that there's going to be any way to save the personal relationship between Zelensky. It's also worth noting that on Monday, Macron is going to be going to Ukraine to talk to Zelensky, and Macron has said that France will stand with Zelensky and with Ukraine. And I think that that's a perfect situation. If the French want to go ahead and pick up the tab, fine. I think we're at $70 billion that we've sent to Ukraine so far since the war started in 22, and an additional 70 since 2014 when Barack Obama opened the door for President Putin to invade the first time. So it's time for the U.S. to actually stop paying for this because there's been no changes. It's just a meat grinder, and Ukraine's going to run out of people to fight.
Mm-hmm. No, and you know what? You are totally right. And just the way Zelensky operates, like, wait, you mean you're not going to give me money? Like, I expect this. Not thank you for what you've done so far. When it comes to foreign policy, I have spent my entire life, I'm 35. Why? And it happened long before this. That every time there's an international conflict or a crisis somewhere, whether it's an earthquake or a landslide or a famine, something happening, the entire United Nations all get together and they look down the row and they go, "Hey, America, you guys got this, right?" And I'm sitting over here going, we are struggling. We have problems. There are people freezing to death in a tent in Western North Carolina right now, and I don't know what the NATO nations have done about it. I don't remember getting a lot from North Macedonia. I don't think we're getting a lot from Slovenia. If we got invaded right now and the Slovenians were like, "Hey, guys, we're on the way," do you feel safer about that? But no, we're paying for their top line expense, and then we get to be lectured to by the Europeans. Well, we have free schools, we have free health care, we have free this. Of course, because you're not paying the most. If somebody was paying my mortgage, I could afford to drive a Lamborghini because I'm not paying the most expensive thing in my life. And it is so frustrating to see all the other countries lecture America instead of sitting back, shutting up, and saying, "Thank you, Daddy."
Yeah.
I am sick of being the sugar daddy of the world. And I'm sorry it falls on Ukraine right now, but this is just the times we're living in.
It's the truth. I mean, a lot of my lefty friends always remind me, like, "Oh, I wish I lived in Europe. Oh, I wish I lived there." I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you do, because essentially you're living in this little colony of the United States where we give you guys a ton of money so you can live this dream of a lifestyle with all these walkable cities and all this nonsense. Meanwhile, the American guy is working ridiculous hours under all these crazy regulations to get enough money to feed his family, and yet everybody can go and have a wonderful evening out in Copenhagen, whatever. It's just not, it's not fair. Copenhagen's a little bit out, they're their own thing, but I'm saying, like, for instance, I would like to say France, I'd like to say England, but a lot has changed there recently, so I don't know, but they like to complain anyways. They glow online.
I see my European friends, they're on vacation in the Canary Islands. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I have a hard time getting to Philly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just sitting and it's like, why? I feel like if you work a 40-hour work week, the first 8 hours you work goes to foreign aid. Yeah. That's what it feels like. And it's not 80% of the time. It's not 90% of the time. It's every time something happens, everyone just looks around and goes, "Well, America will take care of it." Yeah. Meanwhile, like, even in the lefty paradise of California, like, all that money that we've given to Ukraine could be spent to go rebuild the people in California who, if we went $36 trillion in debt and we had, like, airplanes that didn't fall out of the sky and roads that didn't have potholes and kids that could read, I probably wouldn't mind that we were in debt. But the fact that we're borrowing money from China to protect Taiwan from China seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I know you've got a lot of foreign policy opinions. What are your thoughts on Europe and the spending and the treatment of Vladimir Zelensky by President Trump?
I think it's extremely commendable that Donald Trump is making an effort to end wars both in Eastern Europe and the Middle East right now. And I think this rhetoric is trying to manage the expectations of the Ukrainians. In a way, with rhetoric like this, he's kind of letting them know your aspirations of getting back Crimea and Donbass kind of aren't going to happen. And he's
been the narrative that Zelensky's has been pushing, that they're getting back Donbass.
Well, he has to. He'd be extremely unpopular. Guess what? In Ukraine, they want the Donbass and Crimea back.
Sure,
but I do disagree with the specifics of what he was saying. I don't think Ukraine started this conflict. So hopefully it's just here's the thing. As we hand off this conflict to the Europeans, because we are more interested in what's going on in the Pacific, where more of the world is being centered now, Europe's becoming old news. Ukraine, after a settlement is reached here, I foresee the Europeans not picking up the tab, and then eventually actually more of Ukraine getting bitten off. If we didn't support Ukraine to begin with, I think all of Ukraine would have fallen, which were the ambitions of Putin. And thanks to the money spent and the weapons sent over there, the Ukrainians were bravely able to fight themselves. We didn't spill American blood in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians proudly fought off the Russians. So, this is a negotiating ploy. If the Europeans do not step up and if the Americans do decide to take a full step back, I foresee Putin just steamrolling through Ukraine down the line. It was part of the Russian Empire. It was part of the Soviet Union. And Putin is an irredentist who believes that the fall of the Soviet Union was the greatest tragedy of his life, the greatest geopolitical tragedy of his life. So I think we're going to see more ambitions of Putin as a result of this.
But here's the question.
Hold on. Is it your sense that Putin actually does want to move into Europe and, like, say, get Poland and get the former Soviet states back?
Within Putin's lifetime, was Poland part of the USSR or the Warsaw Pact?
It was the Warsaw Pact.
Yeah, so the other country, like, I do believe that he wants to claw back as much former USSR countries as he can, or former Russian Empire countries. Yeah, because he lost territory within his lifetime. He's seen his country collapse into pieces. So totally, I think that's within his ambition to return Russia, in his mind, to its rightful place in world politics, where he sees Russia as a major world power. They've kind of been delegated to kind of an afterthought right now, but the Russian demographics are horrible too. Russia's going to struggle to move forward. I know we like to talk about Ukraine and their struggling demographics, but beyond the war, Russia's in a complete demography collapse. Mary, what do you think about Ukraine?
Well, what I wonder with looking at the combination of, first of all, like Trump's Truth Social post excoriating Zelensky, along with him meeting with Putin, excluding Zelensky to Zelensky's deep dismay. I just wonder, like, what is the the face-saving move for Trump to make this not look like letting Russia win, basically?
I think
They're going to get what they want, and Putin doesn't actually want to throw his hands up and call it a day. He wants his objectives met.
Is it your sense that he wants to take all of Ukraine?
Well, I don't pay close attention, but my sense is that he's not going to make compromises in negotiations.
Phil,
Especially now that Trump has thrown Zelensky under the bus. It looks like, the adults in the room have come in to fix this. I just wonder if that really just looks like Trump. I don't know. It makes it look like Russia has definitively won in this conflict, and that's a terrible look for the U.S.
Well,
in terms of a global superpower.
So I disagree that it's a bad look for the U.S. in that it wasn't the United States actually fighting. Right? The U.S. was supporting and giving money to
also, Trump was
Ukraine.
giving lethal aid to Ukraine.
Yeah,
2020,
but
which was a mistake.
but I still don't think that it's actually the United States that's losing here. It is Ukraine. I don't think I honestly don't think that Putin is going to try to take all of Ukraine. I think that there's going to be a peace deal. Go ahead.
Do you think he's satisfied? Do you think Putin's war aims were just the amount of territory in Ukraine that he currently occupies?
I don't know for sure. I think that the parts of Ukraine that he took are actually the strategic parts, if I understand correctly. He wanted the warm water port. He wanted the Donbass because of the actual topography and the land there.
So they made a move on Kyiv early on in the war. Yeah. People say, like, it's a feint, it's a fake out. According to the amount of Russian casualties from that part of the invasion, I don't think so. So I think...
No, let me address that. I do think that his initial impulse was to take all of Ukraine.
Yes.
I do. I think that because of the stalemate, because of the support from the rest of the world, I think that he's going to have to settle for what he's got, and that's why I think that he won't go after the rest of Ukraine. I think that there's going to be some kind of deal, and that's why I don't think that the U.S. looks like they lose, because the U.S. was never going to get Crimea back or never going to get Crimea back from the Russians and give it to Ukraine. Now he did take a little more territory, but I don't think that he's going to be able to take all of Ukraine, because I don't think that Russia has unless they were to drastically increase or escalate the violence, I don't think they have the ability to take it.
Well, it's a
So
war
I
of
think that the
attrition
United
between
States,
us and them, essentially,
well,
because
it's not between us and them. It's between Ukraine and them.
Yes.
but we're de facto funding Ukraine. Ukraine
It's
can
not
keep
about
fighting.
funding.
Wait.
It's not about funding. It's about the people that are
No, it's
dying.
not. Ukraine will keep fighting until we pull the plug. What's happening first here is not the Ukrainian will collapsing. It's the American will to continue supporting them
They
collapsing.
have 50 and 60-year-old men on the front
No,
line.
here's the difference.
They will run out of people
Yes.
before
But that's not the current
Russians
issue.
run out of
They
people.
will. The current issue with why they would stop the war right now is not because they're running out of people. It's because the Americans would stop funding their arms. Here's the thing, though. If I'm a neocon Russian edition, what I'm saying is I'm trying to run this back in a decade or two, make the same move on Kiev, and I could take Ukraine in piecemeal. Like, hey, I'm the Russian neocon. Hey, I remember when, this was a part of our country. Kiev was the first capital of our ancient Russian civilization that goes back centuries. I'm ready to do this all again. Look how successful we were. First, we started with Crimea, right? Almost a decade later, now we took another piece of the Donbass. Now that the Americans aren't even interested anymore, they won't be sending them weapons. We only need to deal with the stupid Europeans now. They're licking their lips. And Putin's about to say, I'm going to send this message all around the world. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, says this guy's a dictator. Imagine how he's going to use that as propaganda. Who did Trump say started the war? He blames it on Ukraine. So I think that will be used as propaganda in the future. Also, I think Ukraine has such a malign influence on all of our politics that is yet to be fully exposed. In all of our social media platforms, they're looking to fund different things in different ways. And I think it's very important to stay cautious of Russia. I hate to make it like that. I'm not saying Trump's a Russian agent, but there's a ton of Russian propaganda out there. And if you don't think so, I don't think you're paying attention.
No, I think that the American people are far smarter than to, have the entirety of their election be decided by a couple $100,000 in Facebook ads. But here's the thing:
I think Ukraine could be influenced.
I think Americans would have a lot more of a taste for this war if they felt like Europe was doing their part. And I think that
a taste for this war and supporting them. I don't want troops on the ground, boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Well, what's the
even
alternative?
financially?
You're talking about them.
Even financially, it seems like, as I said before, Russia invades Ukraine, the UN gets together and goes, don't worry, guys, America will take care of this. Now Keir Starmer in the UK is saying that he's going to send some troops over there. The UK only has 72,000 active duty troops. Do you know why? Because Daddy America is paying their top line bill. They don't need to invest in a serious military because they know that if anything happens to them, here come the Americans over here. And I think that is the impediment to the America First idea that Europe, it is time for you to step up. We are not living in the Marshall Plan where every one of your countries is destroyed by World War II. You have rejoined the land of the civilized, advanced nations. It is time for you to step up. It was different after World War II. Everything was destroyed. So America was the only
As an American, you should know better. The Europeans will never stand up.
Well, then you know what? Then they can
rise up to the occasion.
The reason why, just like if you let a child live in your basement and never pay rent till they're 40, they're never going to grow up. And it's time for the Europeans to grow up and start paying their own bills.
Is it your belief that the Europeans would allow Russia to take more countries?
When push comes to shove, if the United States wasn't looking to get involved in, if they attacked a NATO country.
Well, no, I think a NATO country. I think that the United States would live up to its NATO obligations.
I don't know if I agree with that. Like, I don't know how many Americans would hear, "Oh, Russia just invaded Estonia, Mary. Do you think we should go to war based on the Estonia?" Mary? Like, should we go to nuclear? Should we go to war with a nuclear power? I know we have the treaty obligation, and that's important, and it's supposed to be deterrence. But when push comes to shove, they're invading Estonia. I guess me and you are going to go. I think there's going to be a conversation that needs to be. What do you think of that?
You're 100% right.
Well, with Putin knowing that Ukraine is struggling to even rally like human capital to keep this war going, and also knowing that the war is deeply unpopular in the U.S. and among Trump's own voters, what concessions is he going to make?
Well, no, but I mean,
he has more leverage based on that.
Well, I think that I think that what Russia's capable of is
Just as a
limited
bad
by the
look
United
for the
States.
US.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I think that it's limited by the U.S. Whether or not the U.S. will fund, right? So if the U.S. decides, okay, you're not going to come to the table, then we can still make this a nightmare for you, because the U.S. does have that ability, and that card, whether or not Donald Trump wants to play that card, that is a card that they're all well aware that the United States does have. Putin knows that the U.S. can print tanks like it prints money. He knows that the U.S. can print advanced weaponry and send it there if he changes his mind. So this is always an option for the United States. Russia doesn't have the ability. They've always done lower tech, not that they don't have some high tech, but lower tech and just massive amounts, right? So whether it be tanks, people, whatever it is, they have a significantly larger population to draw on to send to Ukraine. Ukraine has almost exhausted their young men, their capacity to put young men into fighting positions and stuff. They're bringing in 50-year-old dudes, 60-year-old dudes that are fighting. Now, granted, this is an existential war to Ukraine, so that's going to inspire men of all ages and some women to go and try to fight. But at some point, they run out. And the United States has the ability to pump money into Ukraine long after they run out of viable fighters. We can keep pumping money into that war until all of the people in Ukraine that could possibly fight die. And Russia has enough people to keep supplying the front lines with people longer than Ukraine.
Well, that's why it's
that's
why breaks first.
That's
Ours
why
or the
it's about
Russians?
that's why there's a incentive for both to negotiate. Now Putin doesn't get what he wants, because he did want to go. I do believe that he wanted to take all of Ukraine, but I think that he's fairly satisfied with what he's got, because the locations that he has now are strategic.
I don't know if the limiting principle is the
He can go back.
Ukrainian.
He can go back to Russia and say he got a win. Look, he got the one water port that he wanted.
Exactly.
We can actually say, we're not funding this anymore. We're going to stop the dying in Ukraine.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We're going to go to Super Chats. Don't forget to smash the like button, follow this page, and share this video with your friends if you like it, if you want more content. The best way to support Timcast IRL and the project we do here are to share them with your friends, send the videos to your friends and stuff like that. So let's bring this Super Chats up. What do we got here? Can you make these a little bit bigger? Yeah, we can. Where's that button? There we go. There we go. Keep going. One more. There we go. All right. So Pochita says, oh, now it disappeared. There we go. Zoom it up. There you go. Pochita says, Baby Beanie Fund, congratulations, Tim Pool and family. Yeah, the reason that I am running the show tonight, in case you don't know, is Tim and his wife are out welcoming their first child to the world. I have no more updates than that. I don't know if the baby has been born yet, or if the if Allison is still suffering, but
I don't think it'll ever end, Allison's suffering.
No, I know. Right? But that's why I'm here. I'll be doing the Culture War tomorrow, and also I'll be running IRL tomorrow night, because Tim is going to spend some time with the family, some well-deserved time with the family. So
Mazel tov, Tim.
Congratulations, buddy.
Congrats.
let's see. The what do you got here? Just Cause I'm Free says, want to have your mind blown on what most of the money for Biden's Inflation Reduction Act went to? Go to U.S. spending site and search the keyword climate justice, then look under the grant tabs. Billions are there. That is true. The Inflation Reduction Act was really just a bait and switch. It was the Green New Deal. Mm-hmm. They just changed the name, and most of the programs that were proposed in the Green New Deal were in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, that's why I'm so inspired when I see EPA Administrator Zeldin going, we're going to get that $20 billion back.
I love it.
We're going to. I mean, look, and the fact that they pushed it all out the door as Biden was leaving just lets you know that this was not well thought out. This was everybody's wish list. Everybody on the way out the door hung their ornaments on that Christmas tree and took as much out as they could the minute they knew it was over.
Is it just me, or is climate change as a political issue just completely dropping off the Democrats' interest and agenda? I don't know if it's above
You're absolutely
abortion or transing the kids anymore, or like climate change has really fallen off the Democratic agenda.
It's because they don't have a leader and they don't have anyone to message properly. And that's why you are seeing people going out there who you've never heard of before, because they are looking for someone, anyone, to be able to move them forward. And unfortunately, I think that if they continue to search for that voice, they're going to come up with some people they do not want.
I think that the climate change brand was hurt by Greta a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I think that when Greta was doing her whole shtick at the UN when she was a little kid, it was compelling. But as she got older and people saw her in other places doing leftist activism, they started to get the idea that, maybe climate change isn't really the issue that we thought it was. And I also think that part of the reason is that, but also part of the reason is that like Kevin said, the left is kind of lost right now. They are having a civil war in the left. They don't know if they should follow the extreme left or if they should go back to the Democrat kind of mindset where we're not going to hate people for owning property. We're not going to hate people for being capitalists. Right now, people like Jeet here, and I just saw this post today, people like Jeet here are saying we should go with the ideas that the DSA are talking about. Now, the DSA are the Democratic Socialists of America. That is not social democrats. That is effing commies. All right,
I couldn't agree more.
They are absolutely communists. They tweet about Marx and the immortal science of Marx. That they were like, we follow the science. We follow the immortal science of Marx. I'll tweet that in just a little bit. But the DSA and the far left are fighting with the reasonable left, the people like Ro Khanna and people like
he's dangerous.
He is.
If they listen to Ro Khanna. Not that I'm giving Democrats any advice, but
people like Ro Khanna, people like Richie Torres, people that are actual Democrats that are saying things like we need to get away from the identity stuff. We need to get away from the LGBT issues because the idea of taking the marginalized and making that the focus of our party leaves us without an actual center that can rally around this stuff. You can only get so many people to think, oh, these minority communities are what we need to worry about when they're actually living through serious problems of their own.
And it's also the way they do the protesting. I think that laying in the street thing, blocking traffic, people were like, whatever you're for, I'm for the other thing.
Yep, absolutely. The BLM riots and stuff did significant damage.
Throwing soup on, like, the Mona Lisa. Like, come on.
Yeah, so, all right, let's see. Alien Starchild said, you guys are forgetting Elon donated to help win an election. What would have happened if Kamala won to Elon, to business, to us? This is something that's legitimate. Like Kamala Harris, I have some friends that work closely with people in the former administration that had friends in the DOJ there. And there was a lot of talk about going after people like Musk, going after people like Joe Rogan, possibly going after people like Tim, because they were considered a threat to democracy. And I think that had Kamala won, the country that we live in would be significantly different. There would be significant attacks on their political opponents, people on the right. It would have only escalated. And it's a blessing that Donald Trump won, not just because of Donald Trump or because of Donald Trump's policies, but because the administration that he's put into place is the antithesis of what it used to be. Tulsi Gabbard was on the Quiet Skies list. Kennedy was actually looked at as the persona non grata by the HHS and by the
Wasn't he considered for an Obama level position?
He was for a minute, yeah,
like a low administrator position.
He was a candidate, yeah, or he was being talked about. So, yes, I do think that it's a very, very, very good thing that she left for multiple reasons. Tim Road Rage Langdon said Elon offered to build a solar field and get electricity to native Australians on his dime because he feels people deserve that basic human right, and the Australian government denied it. The man cares. I think that was directed at you.
Sounds like this guy has a great PR team or something, too. I don't know, man. He was trying to help all the starving Africans, and then, I don't know, the African government blocked it. No,
Where'd the
that's
Jay
not
Shields
just
one
like...
go?
What? Sorry.
I was talking to Serge. Go ahead. You were
You
saying?
guys want to do next super chat? No, I think we've done enough on Elon tonight. It's just I found it real interesting that Bannon was willing to come out with those comments about him, and Trump's relationships with people who work for him almost never last. So we'll see how long Elon Musk stays.
I will say this about the Bannon comments, and I find this interesting, and I like this on the right, is that we all do disagree, but we all. Like, we actually have the diversity of ideas that the left continues to shut out, and I think that's what this administration is going to show more than anything else. Like you said, with Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi and Bannon not agreeing, and this one over here going,
former
"We can't do
Democrats."
that." You know
yeah,
what I mean?
well, but that's worth pointing out because I think that speaks to the
We can
argument
hate
that
the
I made.
neocons.
That speaks to the argument that I made earlier that like we have been living in a leftist milieu so long that now the people that are like conservative or save the right or saving the country, they are almost all former Democrats. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, Kennedy. These people are you.
I mean, I'm a New Yorker.
Smith, you know?
We start out as Democrats in New York, the majority of people, and then the more you read and the more you learn, the more you go, nothing here is getting better.
Yeah.
Maybe let's try the other way.
and
When
that
was that for you?
I would say about halfway through Obama's second term, when I started to see that things weren't adding up. Also, I went to college late. I went when I was like 26, and going to college made me a Republican because I was watching 18-year-olds who had no jobs and no life experience tell me about like effective tax rates, and I'm like,
So you voted for Obama twice?
Yep.
Damn, dude. Did you vote for Trump the first time?
damn dude.
Did you vote for Trump the first time?
Yeah.
Okay.
The minute
Interesting.
he was on that stage and said only Rosie O'Donnell, I remember I was sitting in journalism class when that happened. I just went, "Oh, this is over. This is over." They're like, "What? Like, yeah, it's over. He's done." And I'm like, "No, he's gonna win." Like that, because he's a normal person, and I think that's what the last 10 years has really shown is that more normal people are rising to the top than the children are our future. Blech.
Performa 20 says, "Glad to see you here, Kevin. My wife was your nurse at Good Sam a while back. She told me to tell you about your Rumble. Good to see you on Timcast."
Well, thank you very much. Hopefully, it wasn't the most recent one where I had to have an organ removed, but that's pretty wild.
Happy to see that you're okay.
Oh yeah, it was a minor one, so I'm all good.
Minor work. Yeah.
I can't be stopped.
Shadav the Vedmac says, "Hey Phil, maybe review how the UAE is doing in regards to their no income tax and VAT. UAE doesn't have as much infrastructure as America, which can mitigate most foreseeable pitfalls. Take care." I'll have to look into that. I don't know, but I know that the UAE is not some kind of third world hellhole, if I understand correctly. The UAE is
That's Dubai, right?
United Arab Emirates. I don't think that's that's Dubai.
Yeah, Dubai's the city in the
Is
Emirates,
it?
right?
Maybe. Could be.
Be the capital.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's like the most advanced city in the world, right? Didn't they build it in like 9 months? Meanwhile, it took 60 years to build the Second Avenue subway in New York.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Dubai is in the UAE. Yeah, so okay.
Kind of uncanny though. I mean, you see videos of Dubai. Like, I would never want to live in a place that looks like that.
I could never be somewhere where it's that hot.
It's in the middle of a desert and everything's concrete.
And there's no plumbing. Remember, there's no plumbing, everyone. They have to take trucks to literally take out all the sewage of every building and line up trucks for miles. It's not a wonderful,
Is that
it's
They're
true.
doing
Yeah.
marketing campaigns for Dubai,
Oh, yeah.
trying to
Yes, they
convince Westerners to move there.
Is that where they're trying to build the line?
Yes, that's Saudi Arabia. That's what
Saudi
I'm
Arabia,
saying.
okay,
No.
so-
But there's a
Nearby.
lot of projects that get funded by a lot of that oil money that
Yeah.
are just like wild pies in the sky that may or may not happen. So
They're doing a lot of excavation. I've seen whether or not it actually comes to fruition, I don't know, but they're doing a lot of digging out there. So, anyways, Grimwolf says we have to weaken the cartels to the point the Mexican government can establish control, incentivize long-term proper governance, then they can keep a lid on things. They too will have to have a clearinghouse of corruption. Yeah, I think that goes without saying, but I just don't think that saying, well, it's too dangerous for us to try to fight the cartels is a good option, because they're only going to infiltrate the U.S. more. They're only going to have more cities fall, more areas come under their control. I don't see I don't think that the U.S. just saying, well, we'll go ahead and build the wall and then not let anyone else in. I don't think that that's enough. I think that if you're not on the offense, you're losing. So It's not something that I'm hoping for. Like if this, I think the situation could have been handled, like Elaad said, a long time ago, could have been prevented. But now that it's here, I don't think that we have as many options as people think. I think that it's kind of like we're going to have to do some fighting to fix this situation. Malakek Zakhav, I hope I pronounced your name right, says, please read this, Phil. You need to speak to Ed Calderon about cartels. Was previously on Timcast IRL. Cool. Okay. Let's see. What do we got here? Hal Gailey says, free trade only exists between free markets. The CCP market isn't free. Our trade is hobbled via a controlled economy. Each U.S. state has free trade with the other 49. It works because it's fair and free.
Versus a controlled economy there.
What does it say?
It's our free trade is hobbled by a controlled economy, or our free trade is hobbled versus a controlled economy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So each USA has free trade, and the other 49 do. It works because trade is fair and free. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. There's only one of us that's trading fairly. There's only one of us playing by the rules, and we're wondering why China's winning.
Yeah, I mean, China kind of makes the rules that they're going to, they make their own rules, and I don't consider China to be an honest broker. I don't think that if we're not able to actually check to see if China's going to be living up to their commitments, they're not going to. They lead the world in piracy and taking existing technology, and I've listened to this podcast. I listened to the All In podcast, and they've had people on saying, you'll come up with an innovation, and as soon as you release it in China, 2 weeks later another company has it because they reverse engineer stuff so quickly. And if you're dealing with that kind of disregard for property rights, it's tough for countries like the United States that have to have all the rules that we do have. It's tough for them to compete. So let's see. Afuera Media says Toyota makes the cars they sell in North America. They have plants in Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, and Indiana, among others. Good. I like that. I think that I think that we should incentivize making cars in the U.S. and I think that the incentives should be things like lower tax rates for the companies that make them, or no taxes. I think that those types of incentives for manufacturers that produce jobs or for companies that make jobs, I think those things are a net benefit for the American people and for the country as a whole. Let's see. Waffle Sensei says, if Trump didn't win, the Democrats would have destroyed Elon Musk. He donated to Trump for survival, then went all in. His reward was influence. I think that that's probably right. There were something along the lines of 12 or 13 different investigations into Elon Musk's companies. So, and that was under the Biden administration. And the administration was clearly hostile to Elon Musk.
Didn't the federal judge stop him from was it buying stocks?
No, from getting the reward for his stock. So he basically said, hey, I won't take pay at Tesla unless the stock becomes worth this amount of money. And everybody thought that's a ridiculous thing to do because there's no way that stock is going to become that amount of money. And then it did. So essentially what he said is like, look, I won't get paid. If I get paid, or if I do this, I'll make a boatload of money, but I won't get paid unless everybody that owns Tesla stock makes a boatload of money first. He did it. And then a judge in Delaware stepped in and said, no, you can't. So, and that's all politically motivated.
There is nothing quite like somebody who bets on themselves. Who says, you know what, I'm going to make this work, and if I don't, I go bust. Or this entity goes bust.
Yeah.
It's just so many conflicts of interest that are the issue with so many governments around.
Can you point to one person that doesn't have a conflict of interest?
He just has the ick.
No, but I mean,
if
the man owns X,
if you work for a campaign because you want to get a job in the White House afterwards, do you have a conflict of interest?
Say that I think it's fundamentally different when we're talking about the richest person on Earth. So
Elaad just doesn't like rich people. This is the argument we had.
No.
If you don't fundamentally understand
this is important.
that there's again, Elon Musk donated almost $300 million to Trump campaigns through different PACs. He owns Twitter, SpaceX, Tesla, and so he has a lot of these interests across the board.
Show me one person who could donate that level of money that doesn't have a conflict of interest. And I would love to get big money out of politics, but unfortunately, this is the world we live in right now. And as so long as we live in it, I'm going to keep playing by the same rules.
I think Elon Musk isn't he's saying certain things, and I don't think he believes in all of them. And again, I think he's using the MAGA group as a vehicle for his own interests. And I think we'll be seeing the effects of that in the near future. Again, I don't think he was never MAGA right before. Trump's been president before. He wasn't MAGA there.
Maybe we're using Elon Musk.
Trump was against electric vehicles until, Elon Musk started donating a bunch of money to him. And then he actually has a famous quote of when he says, oh, actually, Elon Musk is donating a lot of money now. I guess I got to support EVs and Tesla.
Well, maybe we used Elon Musk for his money. Maybe we said, all right, we'll be nice to Elon
Musk. All right, so use him for his money and then tell him to go continue running SpaceX and Tesla and all these other companies that he owns. It sounds like he has more than enough work to do so. Right. I think we're going to get burned by Musk down the line.
We got to get back to some super chats here. Larkin says Mary said X has less organic conversation and more botted activity with no evidence. I guarantee you there's way less bot posts than pre-Elon. X isn't perfect, but it's way better now, no question. What say you?
I don't know. Let's just glaze Elon. Fine.
Glaze.
No, what evidence do I need? What evidence would that be?
I don't know. I'm only reading the super chat for you.
I don't have a study for you. No, I'm talking about what it was like to be a user of Twitter versus what it's like to be a user of X, and the user experience has taken a sharp downturn.
Let's see. Thomas Conservative says, Russia was always going to win one way or another unless the U.S. wants to have World War III. U.S. and Russia are like Greek gods. We can do anything to the low mortal countries as long as we don't fight each other. I mean, there's some substance to that.
Your metaphor is stupid because there's only one God. And so in your metaphor, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, here's me not touching that at all.
From that, there's no equal footing of the United States and Russia, and compare the two makes you deep misunderstanding of how geopolitics and our economies interact. There's no multipolarity here. We're unquestionably the hegemonic power. And was this a win for you? Was this a win for Russia? Doesn't really feel like it. They didn't really achieve all their goals, and at the cost of under 1 million deaths in Russia. So if I'm a Russian, I don't know how much pride I'm taking in struggling to take, piecemeal parts of Ukraine. You didn't even get all of it, so I'm not wishing you good luck on the next try.
All right, we're gonna do one more. This one glazes me, as Mary says. Walken says, Phil, the new record is fucking fantastic. Rip Ollie. By the way, please confirm that the second bridge on Divine is a very respectful nod to Ollie's riff on Not Alone. I know it, and you know it, and I love Jason for it. Cheers. Yes, it was absolutely a nod to Not Alone. So, all right, everybody. Smash the like button, share the show with your friends, tell everybody you know, and become a member at timcast.com. If you become a member at timcast.com, I believe you also become a member of Rumble, and you'll be able to jump into our after show. There's the Rumble rants, which we're going to touch. We're gonna talk about, and we'll take callers every night after the Rumble rants. We'll take a bunch of callers from the Discord, so go ahead and join that Discord. And Kevin Smith, where can people find you?
You guys can find me 1 p.m. Eastern on LFA TV on Rumble, or I stream on X, or on my personal page, Loud Majority US. I want to thank you guys all for having me on. And real quick, Tim, congratulations. Sorry I didn't get to meet you, brother, but I guess we'll take a rain check on that one.
Yeah. You can find me on Pop Culture Crisis. We go live every Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. And you can go follow me on Instagram and, believe it or not, X as well. Both at Mary Archived.
Mary, it was so much fun. I feel like we were never on IRL together, so I had a really good time speaking to you tonight. And others, of course. My name's Elaad Eliyahu. I'm a journalist here at Timcast. You could catch me on X at Elaad Eliyahu, and then on Instagram is Barely Informed with Elaad. I guess my DMs are available to be glazed or Is that what you guys say now? Glazed or
this something that you
complimented
haven't
or
heard
complaints?
before?
The DMs are open.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. You can subscribe to me there. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. Our new record dropped on January 31st. It's called Anti-Fragile. You can check it out on Apple Music, Amazon Music, Pandora, Spotify, and Deezer. Oh, and on YouTube. And don't forget the left lane is for crime. We will see you tomorrow morning with the Culture War. And if you are a Timcast member, stick around because we are going to be right here with the Rumble After Show. So see you tomorrow.